Welcome to Living on the Edge. My name's Chip Ingram, and I'm glad you joined us this week. You know, we're in a series that talks about how to experience God's dream for your life. In our last broadcast, I talked about giving God what He wants the most. And I'm really excited because this week, we're going to talk about something very important, how to get the very best from God. You know, as I walk through the Christian bookstore, or I talk to people, or I meet Christians after 25 years as a pastor, everybody wants God's best. But you know, it's kind of sad. A lot of people that really, genuinely, sincerely love God aren't getting God's best. Relationships have broken down. Addictions seem to have people in incredible bondage. And we're going to talk today about how you don't have to have that happen to you. In fact, if you're listening to me today and you say to yourself, you know, I want God's best. You know, I've followed the rules. I'm involved in religious activity, but I don't get it. How do you really experience the very best from God? Let me tell you, there's not 7 easy steps. What I want you to know is that you're in a battle. We're going to identify where that battle is, and you're going to learn about some great solutions. No magic bullet, but the grace of God that will allow you to, are you ready? Experience the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. That's today on Living on the Edge. I want to begin this session with an email that I received from a lady who heard Romans chapter 12, verse 1. She writes, "Thanks so much for your broadcast this morning on becoming a Romans 12 Christian. I was saved when I was 13, but I've gone through a lot of hard times throughout college, and my relationship with God has been very up and down. Lately, I've been feeling so lethargic and distant from God. I woke up this morning and I asked myself this question: if I were to die today, what would people say about me? And I honestly don't think they would use the word Christian or messenger for God as one of my first descriptions, or even one at all. It was then that it happened to me. I just happened, God's sovereignty, to turn on the program while washing dishes, and it really was a blessing to me. I've been struggling so much with alcoholism and sexual immorality, and today, in bold capital letters, I decided to give all myself to God and to completely surrender myself to Him. So thank you, and God bless you." That's a very good email. It's a very sad email. I would like to say, that's such an exception of the emails I receive. I get scores, hundreds, thousands of emails, and I'm still trying to read them all. Long plane trips are very good in my life. And I would just tell you, this is so typical of what's happening in the body of Christ in America. I'm a Christian, I'm saved, I know the story, it's genuine, it's been up and down, I'm struggling with alcoholism and sexual immorality. I was running life my way, and it didn't work very well. And I heard, total commitment, absolute surrender is the channel through which God's biggest and best blessings flow. And I repented, changed my mind, and I decided I would do it God's way. And I wish I could read more and more emails of people who say, I've been a Christian 20 years or 17 years or 8 years. And then they tell me what happens 3, 6, and 9 months down the road. Here is a lady who spent the majority of her Christian life not getting the best from God. But God wanted to give her the best. But I think she had that negative view of total surrender or commitment. And she thought it was about sacrifice and being a martyr and renouncing and giving up everything. And, you know, I could never go there because I'll miss something. Well, she tell you what, she would have missed alcoholism and sexual immorality and all the stuff that goes with it. And probably a history of broken relationships. You know, we told 3 little parables, case studies. Remember John? No one felt sorry for John, right? And I thought, boy, I'd like to be in John's shoes, those gold coins. And no one felt sorry for Sheila. She had to give up her whole painting collection, but now she's got a Picasso. And no one felt sorry for the guy that found the treasure in the field. See, that was the positive lens. And by the way, just for some of you that are very internet savvy and thought to yourself, that sounds like an interesting book. And, you know, I went online, I Googled risk, reason in the decision-making process, and I came up empty. I have a small confession to make. Please don't be mad at me. No deception intended. Jesus made up parables to help people look at the lens of the truth in a way where he knew they couldn't hear it or see it if he told them in the traditional religious way. I made up that book. I made up both stories. Now, before you get mad at me, you know what happened? If I would have opened up and said, Matthew 13, here's the hidden treasure, you would have gone, oh yeah, man, I've heard this, and I'm not sure. But you know what? Everyone in here, when it was like real, it could happen. When you started thinking about those 22 gold coins or a Picasso and getting really rich, and what you need to do is have the right knowledge and have the guts to make a decision, I'll tell you what, you were leaning forward. And you should have been. Here's what I want to tell you. At the price of thinking that I'm going to be deceptive, I'll never do that to you ever again. Please forgive me, okay? It was worth this, because here's what I got to tell you. You were leaning forward in the last session when we began to talk about doing life God's way and surrendering all that you are and realizing it's not about renunciation. It's about reevaluation. It's not about being noble and spiritual. It's about being smart and logical and wise and getting God's best. Here's the second question I want to address. Not only do I want to ask and answer the question, how to get God's best, but the question that grows out of this is this question, and that is, why are there so many decisions and so few disciples? I mean, this lady made a decision. Tens of thousands of people all over the world, America, they go to camps, they come forward, they pray prayers. There's decisions. Some are valid, some aren't, only God knows. I'm not going to go there at all. But what we know is there's so many decisions for Christ, but so few disciples. Why? The answer is Romans chapter 12, verse 2. After he's told us, I urge you therefore, my brothers, in view of God's great mercy and love, to offer or present your body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to him. That's your spiritual service of worship. He goes on to say, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice the purpose clause, so that you may prove, literally you may test is the idea. It's a picture of putting acid on a piece of ore or metal to find out the quality by experience of its validity. So you can test or prove what the will of God is, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect. Notice the structure of this passage. Negative command, positive command, purpose clause. Negative command, do not be conformed to this present world system. Positive command, instead be transformed by the renewing of your mind, purpose clause, so that you could test, experience, have God's will, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect. So let's jump right in, and I want to just dig this apart. The first part of the command, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world. Do not be conformed. The word means to be molded. I like the Phillips translation. Don't allow the world to squeeze you into its mold. That's what he's saying here. The pattern, it's really the world's values. There's a value system in the world or the cosmos. And the world system is orchestrated by the prince and power of the air, the liar, the enemy, Beelzebub, Satan, the devil, the slanderer, all those names. And what he does, he has a system set up that is a counterfeit for you and for me about how to find significance, security, happiness, and fulfillment. All genuine desires that God's placed in our heart, and he lays out a salad bar of options that are all lies. Here's how you can get it. And it's like the classic, there's a little candy when I was a kid, and they were called Starburst, or I forget the name of them, but they were real shiny on the outside, and they were sweet. And then you'd stick them in your mouth, and they were really good, and they were real sweet, and in the middle, they were completely sour. And I mean, oh my gosh. And that is exactly what the world system is. It's shiny, it's sweet, it's attractive, it looks good, you taste it, and for a while, by the way, it does really taste good, and there's a sourness that occurs. And he says, don't be conformed to this world. And I don't want to be technical here, but this verb is in the passive voice, it's imperative and present tense. And let me just tell you what that means, because there's some insight to the grammar here, because so often, many of us are trying to not be conformed to the world out of our own energy. We're trying to try hard to be a good Christian, and I'll tell you, it doesn't work. So let me just give you a little technical information, and then we'll wrap it up. It is in the passive voice. It's a use of the verb that denotes the subject is receiving the action. The world is actively molding us. It's an imperative. That means it's a command. It's a prohibition. It's in the mood of the volition of your will. In other words, literally, it's stop being conformed. When Paul wrote this, it was occurring in his church. And third, it's in the present tense. That which is being forbidden is actually happening continually. So here's a good translation, sort of taking those nuances of the grammar. It's stop allowing yourselves to be molded by the influences and pressures of this present world system. That's really what he's saying. Stop. Stop. To this lady, he would say, stop allowing the lure of what you think you'll feel better in alcoholism. Stop allowing sexual immorality and the quick fulfillment and the sense of intimacy that it gives you for a brief period of time and the pain that it brings. Stop doing things, thinking things that take you down dead-end trails and bring death. And if you wonder what the world system is, it's interesting. We have really a very clear definition in 1 John 2, 15 through 17. The passage is in your notes. It says, do not love the world nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, and it describes the world system, it has three components: the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And then there's this commentary. Like if you just didn't get it. The world is passing away and also its lusts, but the one who does the will of God lives forever. And with that pen out, will you do something? Because here's where we miss it. In verse 15, will you circle the word love every time it pops up? Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So often, this idea of worldliness or the world's value, it gets pitted into these little pigeonholes of rules and regulations, and don't do that, and don't do that. And we start thinking that it's all this bunch of lists. And I want to tell you it's about love. It's about a relationship. The world offers lies that are idols. And when you love an idol and when you love the world, you don't love Jesus. When you love the world, when I get caught up in the world, when I love the world, when I think the next toy, when I think the next piece of software, when I think the ministry growing and maybe being more popular, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life, when I love the world, when I buy into the world system, I don't love the Father. So it's about a relationship. This isn't about this rules or that rules, or does that mean you can do this, not do this, do this? It's about love. Let me give you a quick picture of these three things. The lust of the flesh is a passion to feel, okay? I want to feel. It may be through food, it might be through sex, but it's a passion to feel. It has to do with pleasure. It most often has to do with sex. You got to take your own notes here. Everyone's going, where's that? Where's that? It's in your pen and in your head, all right? The lust of the eyes is the passion to have. I got to have that. It's about possessions. It's about salary. The lust or the boastful pride of life is the passion to be, about significance. I want to be someone. And so that's about position. In contemporary language, the world system is about pleasure, possessions, and position, or as some people have called it, sex, salary, and status. That's over here going like this. Come on. It'll deliver. You want to be significant? You want to be a big person? You know, you want people to like you? You want to be a somebody? Look like this. You can have surgery. You got to have this. You got to have so many zeros behind your 401 account. You got to live in this little zone. You know, everyone knows that if you live in that zip code that you're a someone. You got to drive this kind of car. Your luggage has to have certain little symbols on it, so when you get it off, everyone knows you're really important and really wealthy. You have to have a watch that has this brand on it. Your kids have to go to these schools. You got to live in this neighborhood. You got to upgrade every 3 years. It'll make you a someone. You got to look like this. And so young people, the guys that get the creatine and they're pumping the iron, and the girls are getting so skinny that they throw up their food because they got to look a certain way. The lust of the flesh, you want to see the lust of the flesh? Just go get People magazine and flip through it, or Cosmo, or Playboy, or Maxim, or realize that it may have gone down now because there's many internet sites, At one time, 50% of all internet sites were XXX porn. Multi-billion-dollar business. It's probably down to maybe 30 or 40% now. It's people believing that sex will satisfy. And if you want to know about possessions, just, Forbes, right? Are you in the top 40? You in the top 100? By the way, the top 40 all start with a B now. If you're not a billionaire, you're not even in the club. Or if you want to know about what really matters, status, the most watched show in television in America is American. There's an interesting name, isn't it? I want to be an idol. I want to be a someone. The world is promising to deliver on significance, security, meaning, purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. And God is saying, don't love the world. It won't deliver. And the reason there's so many decisions and so few disciples is that a person can be genuinely born again, love God, be translated from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of night, and then their diet is of the world instead of the word, and the world will produce this kind of a lifestyle with this kind of pain. And by the way, some people are very sincere. They don't know that. They've never had anybody help them. They don't know the truth. Others, it's a willful decision. But the first half is don't love the world, nor the things of the world. And then notice God's heart. He's not down on us. He doesn't want you to miss the best. The world's passing away. But he who does the will of the Father abides forever. Your soul and my soul is in a cosmic conflict. And the world system, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life are wooing you away. And by the way, it's where it started. Go to Genesis 3 and do the research. What three things were Adam and Eve tempted with? Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. Jesus, when he was confronted with the enemy, what three things was he confronted with? Exact same things. Nothing new. Just a little bit different package. And a media system that absolutely delivers it like never before in human history all around the world. But getting God's best is not simply a matter of saying no to the world and the lies of its world's values. It's saying yes to the truth of God's word. It's understanding who you are and letting him change you from the inside out. So look at the second. The positive command is, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed. By the way, it's metamorphosis. It's, remember in 9th grade biology when, the little caterpillar, or I know there's a special name for it, but when the little caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it metamorphosizes, meta to change from the inside out. Or remember in Mark 9 when Jesus was transfigured? That's literally the word. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transfigured. What happened on the Mount of Transfiguration? Sometimes you can read that and you can gloss over it, and you somehow think that Jesus was there, and there's Peter, and there's John, and then Moses and Elijah show up, and a great light was shining down on him. That is not what the text says. What happened was he unveiled his glory to a level. And literally what he did is this human flesh, he pulled off the veil, and the light came out of him. And it was dazzling white, brighter than the sun. He was metamorphosized. It's from the inside out. That's God's plan for you. That's God's plan for me. Not conformed to the world, transformed, but how? By the renewing of the mind. Let me show you the grammar here because it's also instructive. Transformed is in the passive voice. God is the one who does this in our lives. Okay? In other words, you're the passive voice is the receiver of the action. In other words, God's the only one that can do this. Trying hard doesn't do this. Second, it's imperative. It's a command. We have a real responsibility to co-labor with him in transformation. Only God can do it, but you're not passive going, okay, God, change me. That's not how it works. Only God does it, but he's going to tell you and tell me, you have to get the raw material of my word in your mind so you stop believing those lies and you start focusing on this truth. And not only will you it's not just that you know the truth, but something will happen in your heart supernaturally where you will begin to believe the truth, and your attitude to the world, instead of, oh, I want it, I wish I could have it, but I know God doesn't want me to have it, you'll look at it and go, that's stupid. That's dumb. I don't want to be like Brittany. My heart goes out to Brittany. I don't want to make $23 million to dunk a basketball and put white stuff up my nose and have the world worship me and find every relationship and everything meaningful or significant. You know what? I don't think I want to be American Idol. I don't think I want to live the lotto. I read a book on all the people that won the lotto, and what happens to their life afterwards. I mean, it's like train wreck after train wreck after train wreck. Lord, what I want is enough money to do your will, and I don't want to be poor, and actually, I don't want to be too rich because it takes a lot of maturity. What I want is I want you. And Jesus said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Free to love God, love yourself, love others. So that's what he's talking about. And then finally, it's transformed as in the present tense. It's continually ongoing process. This isn't something you do one day. And so the translation I think that's helpful here is, but allow God to completely change your inward thinking and outward behavior by cooperating wholeheartedly, moment by moment, with the Spirit's renewing presence. So you're allowing God, notice where it starts, to change your inward thinking that leads to your outward behavior. There's choices you make. Walking with God isn't like this feel good, I want to do what he wants me to do all the time. A lot of the time is, I know this is what I'm to do. Everything in me wants to go over here. And you say no. And as I choose to make that decision, God's grace and power gives me the ability to do what he wants me to do. I love this passage in terms of the process in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. Paul is talking about the old covenant and the new covenant. And as he talks about the old covenant in contrast to the new, he says, but we, all with unveiled faces, unlike Moses who would veil his face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit. Would you circle the word beholding? See, reading the Bible, memorizing passages, being an authentic community, it's not a little list of activities that are like, okay, A plus B plus C plus D to the third power equals spiritual maturity. No. All those things are merely means of grace where in community you see the Christ in others. Where as you are reading the Word of God, the written Word becomes the living Word, and the living God speaks to you. And you ask him a question, and you're beginning to pray, and there's a big decision, and as you sit quietly, the Spirit of God brings a verse that you've memorized that lets you see it in this way, and you take a step of faith, and you watch God work. Transformation happens when you see and know Jesus. In fact, 1 John will tell us that we don't know what we're going to be like, but this is what we know. When we see him, we will what? Boom! We'll have that, theologians call it the beatific vision. When we see him, we'll be like him. And so the process of transformation is saying no to the world, yes to God. And as we see and behold him, notice, look at the verb tense after that. Look at the verb tense. Are being transformed. It's a process. It's not a big event. It's not just a one-time shot. It's not this super-duper experience. I hope you have lots of super-duper experiences. I want them too. But it's a process. Well, how does it happen? What's the means of transformation? How does this really work? I mean, practically. The means of transformation is by the renewing of your mind. It's thinking differently. It's thinking from a different perspective. It's thinking and having a worldview and looking at life the way God looks at life. The problem with all this talk about worldliness versus spirituality is we tend to get it just in those categories. In other words, God's view is that people really matter and things are used to help people. The world system is things really matter and you use people to get things. The world's view is it's me, me, me. You deserve a break today. I'm loving it. I've got the fun. Listen to just watch commercials. You want to know what the world is? Just watch commercials and say, what's the message? And God says, no, it's about loving me and putting others ahead of me. It's kingdom thinking. It's about, the world is about, it's your personal peace and prosperity and security, and how can you get it for you? And God's kingdom says, guess what? Give, and it'll be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. I will bless as you think about others, as you consider others as more important than yourself. The whole world is about, you can be happy. And God says, no, actually, you can be holy. And in a fallen world, you'll have a lot of days where you're not very happy, but you can have a joy in the midst of the pain. Happiness has to do with happenings and circumstances. Joy has to do with a byproduct of a relationship, of a sovereign God who's in control. And you may go through hard times, but he'll be with you in the midst of it. You see the difference? Well, I don't know about you, but that's pretty strong stuff that we talked about today, isn't it? You know, after pastoring for many, many years, I've seen the heartache and the pain and the hurt of Christians' lives that just aren't working out. And they've tried the 7 steps, and they've tried the 10 steps, and they've tried reading their Bible more, but they never quite get where the real battle is. You know, we learned that there is a world system, and it promises amazing things. It says if you have fame and looks and money, you'll be significant, you'll have purpose, you'll have passion. Life will really work out. Last night, as I was preparing for this, I watched the ESPYs. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's the honoring of the greatest sports stars of the whole year. And, you know, they pan the audience, and I mean, the most beautiful women I've ever seen were there. The most talented athletes, the greatest actors. I mean, it was huge screens and sizzle everywhere. And as I watched that, I just realized there's the world system. Now, I love sports. I used to be a coach, don't get me wrong. But what I saw was the promises of the world are telling you and telling me, I need to look a certain way. You know, it's kind of the front of Cosmo, the front of Fortune, the front of People magazine. And, you know, when those things go in my mind, and I fill my mind with movie after movie and advertisement after advertisement, you know what? We are what we eat. I struggle, and I get drawn into that. What I want you to know is that for your life to change, you have to change your diet. You have to recognize the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is a seductive world system that wants to literally crush and eliminate the Spirit's work in your heart. In our next broadcast, I'm going to talk about the positive side, how by the renewing of your mind, how to do that, what it looks like. Literally, you can experience the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. So there's a double proposition. We need to learn to say no to some media and some relationships and some internet that's putting thoughts in our minds that draw us away from God. And we have to say yes to truth and scripture and beauty and the promises that God has that will allow our lives from the inside out to literally get His very best. Please do not miss our next broadcast. And if you can't wait, go to the website and get some good material to help you renew your mind.